There we go. Hello, just about live in time for when I said I'd be live, because I said I'd be about somewhere between 9 and 5:30, so just about managed to do that, which is good. So this is my part 5 review to Most Haunted. Back in November last year, did a 5-part Halloween special. This is my review of that fifth part. I have posted today a written review on thetrueparanormal.blogspot.com, which will be far more in-depth and detailed as to everything that happens and when it happens in comparison to this video. This video is just my general thoughts on the bigger things that happen. With that, I discuss pretty much every knock and bang and tap. This isn't going to be that. This is the same as my previous reviews, just me waffling on about various things that happened in the episode. I have made some notes, and I have my notes that I used for the post as well, just in case I need to refer to anything. So firstly, I want to say that I was surprised by this episode, because obviously I do the predictions. I've not made the notes of the predictions. They were fairly accurate, but I kind of over-predicted, because I saw a thumbnail in particular, which was Yvette looking into a mirror. So straight away I thought from that thumbnail, they're going to do scrying, Yvette's going to see her face in the mirror. That doesn't happen. At one moment I've just got a reflective thing to my side, which I'll move, because that was just a bit of a distraction. I could just see a light shining in the corner of my eye. But yeah, so I expected Yvette to see her face and things, but that didn't happen. Instead, a strange thing of the camera cutting out happened, which I have thoughts on. But I'll go into all of that in this review. But I was pleasantly surprised, because I thought Glenn and Yvette wouldn't really get anything at all. That seemed to be the trend of it, that Glenn doesn't get any activity. Same with Greg, really. So I thought, Glenn, you're not going to get anything, really, even if he's with Yvette. Because he's with Yvette, I was like, you might get some tapping. But they got some little bits and pieces, but not anything substantial, which is good. Because I think that if you go out and investigate, it's very unlikely you're going to get anything substantial. And that's not because I don't think the paranormal exists, that's because I think that the paranormal can't do that. I think that it's just very minor things that can be done, because it's all about build-up of energy. So unless you're incredibly lucky and go to all these locations where there's a ton of energy there, I don't think you're going to get much. Same with Greg. Greg doesn't get much. He gets what he's been experiencing on all of his investigations, which is this faint tapping in the distance from him, which he's just constantly kind of chasing around. Then you have Carl and Stuart, who I really thought would have everything. I was right in my prediction of an apparition. You don't get the apparition on the camera. You get the Stuart looking off into the distance and saying he's just seen a shadow figure walk across. But that is a form of apparition. Granted, only Stuart sees it. The camera doesn't see it. Carl doesn't see it. But because Stuart saw light anomalies in previous investigations, and Carl sees faces in mirrors and windows and whatnot, I was like, yeah, they're probably going to get an apparition at some point within one of these parts, and they technically do. So I was right with that. And like I said in my review, they investigate the world's most haunted toilet, which I found very, very funny throughout the episode, because if you bear in mind, some people think Most Haunted is incredibly fake. I'm on the fence with it, which is why I've decided to review it. I'm not going to review another episode for a while. 5 weeks of Most Haunted pretty much in a row is a lot of Most Haunted to be doing in a row. So I want to just write about a few other things first. But from watching it, you can see certain patterns. So I don't think that it's completely fake. But bearing in mind some people think that it is, to then think, oh, that toilet bit was all scripted. I was like, who came up with the idea of let's investigate a haunted toilet? It's just, maybe the behind the scenes like, oh, let's see if we can get away with this time. But yeah, it was a funny moment. It's like the weird narrative that I write about Yvette and Glenn was very strange, and I'll read out some quotes from that if I can quickly find them. But I'll discuss that in a little bit. But yeah, so Carl Stewart was surprisingly tame as an investigation. I thought, right, they're together again. It's gonna like with the previous time when they were together, ladders fell. They were hearing loads of knocks and bangs and things, and Stuart saw White anomaly, and I was like, okay, that's fair enough. And in my prediction, I said I bet a tap's going to turn on, and it didn't. But I do suspect that that's because they turned on the tap for Glenn when he was by himself, and obviously if you've got Carl and Stuart constantly there in close proximity, kind of on camera, one of them isn't going to have the chance to sneak away to switch on a tap. So I think that's why. But yeah, so let's start with Yvette and Glenn's section. As I said, there's a weird narrative that went through it, which was really weird because there was a strange emphasis on not just them being alone, but being together. And I don't know why, because I am fairly certain, I'm trying to remember because I'm pretty sure I'm trying to remember which location it was in. I can't remember which location it was. There was a location during these 5 parts, I'm sure of it, where Yvette was with Glenn. And he was saying to her about it being really quiet. I think it was the upper living quarters. Yeah, hospital wing and upper living quarters. And they had very minimal activity. So it's not like it's a rarity for them to be together. They were together like, literally a few moments ago from their point of view. I assume this is all filmed on the same night. It was probably like half an hour ago. But yeah, there was a lot of weird emphasis. And I'll read out some quotes just to show the weird narrative that was going on. I know that this isn't really a paranormal based thing, but it is a critique I had of the episode. So yeah, you had Yvette starting off being quite dramatic, saying Pendle Hill is completely obliterated by the night clouds and the storm clouds, which I'm not a fan of the over dramatic stuff. I get why they do it because at the end of the day, even though they say at the beginning that it's not for entertainment purposes only, there is the only there, which implies that they're doing it partially for entertainment purposes as well as being a legitimate investigation, which means that they do want views, they do want people to be liking the video, sharing all of that lot, which is why they have the narratives and why they have these bits of, the build-up, as it were, because they're trying to make it interesting for viewers, which is absolutely fine. So the weird narrative. If I can find these quotes. Oh yeah, so straight away, just before entering, she's asking Glenn how he's feeling, and then Glenn is the start of the narrative because he says, excited, just me and you. And I was like, okay, it's not really paranormal context, because usually if you say it's just me and you say it after you've just heard a bang, and you're like, oh, I don't know what made that, it's just me and you here, I didn't do it, did you? You didn't know? Okay. That's the emphasis that you'd expect, that's the context you'd expect, right? That they're hearing something, or they're experiencing something, and they're basically just crossing names off a list of saying, well, it's not me, it's not you, it's only us here. That's the context you'd expect. So just straight away being just me and you, I was like, you said that before, like you. So I don't know whether or not he said it because he's somewhat suspicious, because I do have suspicions on Glenn's role in Most Haunted and how he is in these investigations. I don't think he fakes things. I think him and Glenn are I think Glenn and Greg are definitely not faking things. Whether or not they're going along with things is a different matter, but they themselves are not faking things. I am confident on that. All you have to do is watch these investigations and watch how quiet it is in their segments, and that highlights it, I feel. Because you look at Glenn by himself, nothing happens. Look at Greg by himself, nothing happens. Look at Carl by himself, you've got a bunch of stuff happening. Stuart by himself, bunch of stuff happening. Yvette by herself, I don't think, was she by herself? I don't think she was by herself at any point, which is fine. But when she was with Carl, stuff was happening. When she's with Greg or Glenn, nothing's happening, or very minimal. If she's with one of those two, the stuff that's happening is distant. It's like if stuff happens for any of those two, it's distant. It's like what I said with Greg, he's chasing up and down a corridor as though there's one person one end, one person the other end, and is kind of being torn between the two. That's my suspicions. Whether or not they know, I don't know. But yeah, weird narrative. Going back to that, because I will go off topic every now and then. Yeah, so he says, it's just me and you. And again, when they're in there, Yvette to Glenn, it's just me and you, the whole house to ourselves. Again, I don't know why they're putting emphasis on this. And I think there's a moment in the kitchen as well. Because I think there's 4 moments in total where they say about it being just those two. Which is odd to say it 4 times. Right, let's have a look to see if I can find the other quotes. Was it that bit? Yeah, it's just the 2 of us. And she seems quite amazed at that. It's Yvette that says it when they're in the kitchen. Because she's going on about how they're a 5-minute drive from everyone else and the overall atmosphere of the place. And because she just starts kind of laughing a bit about it and then just says, oh, it's just the 2 of us. I'm like, this is the 3rd time you've mentioned this now. Are you just trying to convince us that there's no one else in the house? Or are you having a weird narrative that's going along with it? And then finally, as they're going up the stairs, she says to Glenn, these stairs are wide enough for both of us to be together. And I'm like, what is with this weird narrative going through it? And like I say, it's not a paranormal thing, it's just a weird narrative, because usually any narratives are just to do with how horrible the place is, or anything like that. And it was strange and implied things between Yvette and Glenn. I could just be reading into it and reading the complete wrong end of the stick, but it was weird. It was a strange thing. But yeah, so they're just some quotes. There's 4 quotes there. It was weird and repetitive, and because it's 4 times throughout the episode, it really stood out. Especially as they're going up the stairs to say to someone, "Oh, these stairs are wide enough for us to be together." I'm like, all right, why are you sounding like long lost lovers? It's a bit weird. But yeah, but their overall investigation, going back to paranormal related things, it was in the episode, I had to mention it, but going back to the paranormal, it was very good. Straight away, Yvette is, like, they hear footsteps upstairs, I think 2 heavy footsteps, and Glenn says, do you want to go upstairs to check that out? And Yvette says, no, I want to stay down here, I want to get used to the noises of the house, I want to get used to the wind, I want to get used to all of that stuff. Which is absolutely brilliant, I think, for Yvette to have said that. And I know people will be torn on that, because some people will hear that and think, oh, you've heard footsteps, you don't want to go up because there's someone up there. But the other side of that argument is she wants to just get used to the house and the noises, because they might be natural noises that they're hearing. So, because it's only the 2 that happen, so she might just want to, just wait there, listen to see if it happens again, listen to see if she can find out where things are coming from, get used to the atmosphere, get her bearings of the ground floor. And I think that's all right. They just need to kind of film in a way where they are kind of showing as much as they can downstairs to show it's not them. And then when they do go upstairs, they have to kind of show, look, there is no one up there. And then that's fine. That's absolutely fine to do that. And Glenn says it's a good call, and I do agree with him. I've thought about it a fair bit. At first I agreed with him, and then watched the episode with my mum. She said that it seems like there's someone upstairs, they don't want to show it. And I was like, that's a good point that you've made. But then I thought about it for a bit, and I was like, no, I think it is a good call to get used to the natural noises of the house first. So that was very good discussion from her. And even later on in the episode, she says about how quiet it is, and she says, that's really interesting because we know it's a quiet house, and that means if any loud bangs do happen, we know that it's not just a natural noise, there'll be something behind it. Granted, they then have to look into that noise, so like with the footsteps, if they never hear it again, they need to kind of try and figure out what caused it, instead of just jumping to a paranormal conclusion. But it was a good bit that she did, and I have high praise for all that. Then you've got a noise as well, which Glenn hears, which he says it sounds like a voice. And I'm going to read out the quote, because I think I've quoted it, because I think it was the first part. Yeah. Okay, I've not quoted directly, um, but it's interesting because throughout the part, Glenn says that he wants to go upstairs. And that seems a bit like a narrative as well from Glenn, that he wants to go upstairs. He feels like things are going to happen if he's upstairs. And it's interesting because I have a theory watching these that Glenn's aware of things that the team are trying to do and trying to do a little bit, like with Carl and Stuart. Because there are little things. I'll discuss this more in my overall thoughts review video that I will do. But after he says that he wants to go upstairs and feels like stuff will happen upstairs, Yvette then says, I feel like we're being watched very, very closely. And you can't help but wonder, and it is purely speculatory, but you can't help but wonder, is that a subtle message from Yvette to Glenn saying, remember, we're watching you, don't do anything, don't reveal anything? That's it's reading into things, absolutely, but that kind of, the program prompts questions, and that's one of the questions. And because Glenn's the skeptic as well, and you can't help but think back to Kieran O'Keefe when he was on the program with Derek Acorah, and Kieran O'Keefe did out Derek Acorah basically as being fake or getting information from elsewhere. So I can't help but wonder, is Glenn, who is acting as the skeptic, kind of doing the same? And I'll go more into detail on that on my overall thoughts, because I'll discuss little things throughout other episodes which imply this. But yeah, so that's what Yvette says in response to that. But going back to this noise, Glenn says that he heard a voice from upstairs, which again goes into the upstairs thing. And granted, you do hear a noise on the camera. You do hear a noise. I don't know if you'd hear it on the TV. I know that some sounds when you play them like through the TV I've here, you play them through there, you can't hear half the bangs and knocks that you can hear if you have it in headphones on full volume. So I don't know if this is one of those that can hear it on the telly or not, but you can hear it in headphones. And he says it sounds like a voice, but he doesn't know if it's a yes or a no in regards to Yvette asking if Janet Preston's there, who is one of the Pendle Witches. And he says it's something trying to acknowledge Yvette. And I've listened to that noise. I don't think it's an overlay, because like I said, I don't think Glenn fakes things. If anyone acknowledges an overlaid noise, it means that they are in on it. Because that overlaid noise has not occurred. That is just when you take a noise and you place it over a pre-existing video. So that it may seem like that noise has happened within that video, but it hasn't. It's just been added to it. It's like a lot of sound effects and things in films. They're overlaid noises to whatever footage they film with the actors. But yeah, so I don't think, because I don't think he fakes things, I don't think he's done anything. I think it's a case of, it's not an overlaid noise, but he does mention a chimney earlier on, which means I think it was likely an owl or pigeon, some sort of outdoor animal, because it does sound a bit like an owl. And when I first heard it, I was like, that sounds like an owl. Is that him faking things and making things seem like it's something it's not? No, it's not. I think that in the moment he just mistook that noise as an owl, as a voice rather, and I think he also wanted to go upstairs. So I think throughout it all, it seems like he's trying to convince Yvette to go upstairs. Ever since those footsteps, he's been like, "Let's go upstairs. Let's do it. I feel like we're gonna get active. Let's go upstairs." And like I say, this could be because he wants to take the camera upstairs and show around before that person who might be up there can hide. And also, I thought that you'd have stuff downstairs, particularly with the door, because there's one moment in particular where when they enter, they leave both the doors open for some reason. Because there's a front door, and then you've got a little indoor porch type thing, and then another door to lead into the living room. And Yvette, well, I think he leaves both of them open, and then they realise the doors are open. Yvette goes to close the outside one. Glenn goes to close the inner one, and Yvette's like, "Oh no, it's fine. You can leave that," and he closes it anyway, which I'm very glad about, because in theory, what could have happened is someone could have stuck in behind them and been in that porch area. So if they left that door open, they could then sneak into the house without any noise being made. But because that door is now closed, they can't sneak through, which means you'd hear the door. And yeah, so this is what I mean by, like, there are certain things he does where I'm like, has he done that because he suspects things and he's trying to prevent any kind of fakery shenanigan type things. So yeah, this is why I'm like, I don't think he's in on anything. But yeah, so also really good point with Glenn. He does this brilliant thing where, because I always think investigators should carry some paper with them, so that then if they hear a noise, they can write down what the noise is on the paper. I mean, granted it's dark, so it doesn't really work, but unless you have a torch or head torch or something like that. But you can write down, if you hear a noise, what the noise is, and then you can be like, right, let's discuss what noises we just heard and where it's from, so that then we know, that we're not impacting one another's thoughts on it. Because if you are in a haunted location or supposedly haunted location with someone else, and a noise happens, if one person's then like, oh my god, did you hear those footsteps? They came from the living room. You're straight away, because you're in the dark, you're disorientating things, you're going to think, oh yeah, it was footsteps from the living room. Yeah, you're right. When really, before, because you might have been unsure on the noise, you might have thought, oh, maybe it was a knock from upstairs or something like that. But because they've said that, and so like, oh my god, did you hear? You're going to go with that. So if everyone writes it down or something like that, it just eliminates that kind of like confirmation bias type thing that will happen. So he kind of does a similar thing where Yvette asks if he heard a noise. So she says, can you hear that? After 3 footsteps / bangs happen. She says, can you hear that? Glenn then says, what did you hear? Yvette says, sounds like footsteps. So straight away Glenn isn't being like, oh yeah, I heard footsteps. He's saying, what did you hear? And then she says, sounds like footsteps. And then he asks which room. So again, he's not saying, oh yeah, I heard that from wherever. He asks which room. And then he does this thing where at the same time, so when she answers, saying above us, he says it at the exact same time, or tries his best to. Now you could argue, is it scripted? I don't think it is. But it's great because it removes that the bias of her saying like, oh yeah, I've heard footsteps upstairs, and then him being like, oh yeah, it did sound like that, didn't it? So from him saying at the same time, it kind of implies they've not necessarily heard the same thing, because he never says footsteps at the same time, but it implies that it definitely came from upstairs, or from above them. And again, it's good because it doesn't really feed into the whole thing that I've said about Glenn with him trying to nudge upstairs, because there it's Yvette who said above us. So it's one of those. So it was a really good segment. And then not much really happens in the rest of it. In the rest of their investigation, they kind of wander around, calling out. Not a lot happens that I can think of. I've kind of covered the big things. Big thing to mention, history. Yvette at one point says, we know the history of this place and what happened here. I've watched the start of part 1 again to see what they say about the history of the location. They say nothing. As far as I'm aware, unless I've missed a bit, because I may very well have just... Yeah. It's weird. I don't think they really say anything. Because I watched a bit specifically for the Witch's Cottage, which is where they are, and it doesn't say anything. I've tried looking online on the Gisborne Estate website, it doesn't say anything, just lists it as a filming location, doesn't even give a name for it. So, I don't know if they've made stuff up. I don't know if the owner of the property has been telling them stuff, but it's a bit, it's not particularly great regarding history. And Yvette, in that moment, instead of saying, we know the history, she should discuss the history a little bit. It's one criticism I have of Most Haunted is they need to take the history, they need to take what they know about the building and what people have said, and they need to try and apply it. Or they need to try and, if they've heard that there's a child there, they need to try and bring, I don't know, like a toy car or a ball, something like that, aimed towards kids. They need to bring it there, put it in the thing, like they did with the Return to Pendle Hill investigation. They brought a little bike with them. And they need to put it there, and they need to be like, right, if you're a child, play with the thing, make it move, do all that stuff. Can we hear you laugh? That kind of thing. But they don't. It's a lot of these 5 parts have just been them wandering around aimlessly, calling out hello, and not really getting any answers. Granted, that could just be because of lack of activity, but it seemed a bit weird. Especially with the lack of equipment that they use, because I do think they should use some equipment, but they don't. The most equipment you see is Yvette with the K2 meter, which she doesn't have, I don't think, during this part. But yeah, so their part, Yvette and Glenn's part, finishes with scrying. So they are upstairs, they're walking around. Yvette then approaches a room and has a Derek moment, as I refer to in my written review. She goes full on Derek Akora, where she's saying her stomach's flipping over and her knees have gone, and that's fine. You can have impacts like that. I'm not kind of being critical and laughing a little bit at that. It's the fact Glenn goes into the room and he's feeling fine. He's like, "Oh, what are you feeling? What's wrong?" kind of thing. And she's saying all that, and then I'm gonna find the exact quote again, just so that then I'm not misquoting or making up things or anything like that. Yes. So the Derek moment. So she says she has a very bad feeling about the room, and when she enters the room, 1 minute, I'm just going to get rid of that a little bit. There we go. She says, "I've just got the word misery in my mind, misery." And then while she's doing this bit, she's in the room, she's got her eyes closed, she's got her hand out, the kind of hand resting on these drawers, which fair enough, she said her knees have gone. So that's fine. You can I'll be holding some drawers. It's all right because she said her knees have gone. But the fact she's got her eyes closed at the same time and she's kind of like doing that kind of thing, and at the same time that she's saying, I've just got the word misery in my mind, misery, and then she whispers misery, misery while she's doing that, and I was like, that's a proper Derek moment. Like, I wasn't aware Yvette was psychic, you know. And then she even says, "I don't know if that's what I'm picking up on." And I was like, just the phrase "picking up on," I'm like, that's kind of the language of psychics. And it just struck me as a bit odd. Now, granted, I absolutely understand if this is a legitimate moment. Absolutely. I need to acknowledge this bit because I've had a similar experience myself. I am not psychic at all. But I had an experience at Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight where there was a well. I was looking down into the well and I just had an image just coming into my mind really strong of a woman falling down the well, and I felt like if I looked at the water there would be a face looking back up at me. And that's a very, very intense experience that I had there, which then I left that area because it was very intense and just felt overall quite spooky. And it was such a strong thing, I googled it later and people have reported seeing a face at the bottom of the water because a woman has fallen down the well and did drown. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So Yvette might be having that kind of experience, but the way she's portraying it with her eyes closed, her arm out, and all that is the thing that I'm a bit iffy on. Granted that it might just be her experience of the paranormal, I don't know, but it struck me as odd. And then it's probably what caused Glenn to say to her, "Do you want to try some scrying? There's a mirror in this room." And sure, she's like, "Yep, we'll do that." And then she does that and she's like, "No, I'm freaking myself out." And without saying why, and then he's like, "I want to do it, you should do it again." And she's like, "Okay." And then she does it and then the camera cuts out. And we're told that it just ran out of battery, that was it, and it had plenty of time left on the battery and before their vigil started. And I've said in my written review, I think it's probably, assuming the battery did legitimately die in that moment, I'm going to assume it's because it's a cold location. Yvette earlier on does say it's a very cold location, so it could just be because the cold makes batteries drain quicker. So it could be that. It could just be natural camera draining faster than they expected because of the cold. Or it could be paranormal draining the camera. Or another thing, which is a very skeptical way of looking at it, is that something was caught in the mirror they didn't want to be caught in the mirror. Possibly there was someone upstairs who had done the footsteps earlier and they were just about caught in the mirror enough where you can tell. And they couldn't edit it out. And so they just cut it before then to make it seem like a natural cut when it wasn't. That was a very skeptical way of looking at the footage. Out of the three, I think it more than likely, I want to believe it's more than likely just it's cold, so the battery drained faster. But they would know that, and they probably know how fast the battery's going to drain if it's cold. So it leaves questions, which isn't good for any legitimate investigation, which they claim it is. But that's all that happens with Yvette and Glenn's section. Then moving on to Greg's section next. The psychiatric building. Oh yeah, I should have said Glenn and Yvette were in the witch's cottage. I think I probably mentioned it, but Greg was in the psychiatric building, which I expected he'd get more of the same, and he did get more of the same. He says in his investigation, he's hearing tapping in the main corridor. From one end or whichever end, like if he's on the left end, you'll hear it from the right end, and he'll go over to the right end, and then he'll hear it from the left end. So it's a lot of him just going backwards and forwards along this corridor, chasing these noises, and then he does go into other corridors, and he says, "No, I'm not hearing anything here." Then he goes upstairs at one point, makes quite a funny joke about the activity room. He goes in there and says, "Oh, is there any activity in here?" It's a very kind of dad joke type thing, but I found it funny. And again, he was getting nothing in there at all. Called out. He basically tried every method possible to call out to the spirits as well, which is fantastic. He called out to any spirits. He called out to anyone in general. He called out to, for them to slam doors, to tap, to knock, to push him, to do everything. He was calling out. He was saying this specific door, move this one. He was that one. Okay, do this specific door, and he was trying everything he could, and also a really good thing with Greg, which is why I think he's the best investigator on the Most Wanted team, is he puts the camera down. So when he's walking through, he'll show in each of the rooms, and then he'll settle on a room, and he'll put the camera down in the corner or on something, and you'll have a full body shot of himself in that room, so that you can very clearly see that it's just him, and you can see if any noises happen. You can see his movements, you can see his hands, you can see his feet, you can see his mouth. You know if you hear a voice, it's not going to be him saying something. You know if there's a knock, it's not going to be him saying, because he's got his full body in shot. And that is what should always try to be done in an episode of Most Haunted, or any investigation. You should always try and capture your investigators on camera as often as possible. I remember in the earlier seasons, whenever Kieran O'Keefe would do his little talky bit, he would make these comments, and he would say if a door slammed, he'd look at that footage and he'd say whether or not it was good based on, can we see where all the investigators are, and can we see the entire door in shot when it happens, and can we see both sides of the door. I think they were the three requirements, which if all three were, yes, you know where everyone is, everyone's in shot, yes, you know what the door looks like on both sides, and it's completely in shot, he would then look at that and be like, I can't explain that then. So, because he'd know whether or not stuff was overlaid or footage was tampered with, he'd know that. So just looking at the raw footage, he'd be like, yeah, I can't explain that. If I know where everyone is and there's no shenanigans happening in the moment, yeah, that makes sense. It's good footage. And that's what Greg always tries to capture. And it's why at certain points you add the camera there and be like, slam this door while I've got the camera pointed at it. Which they don't get at all, really. They hear a lot of off-camera noises, but that's no good. That is not good evidence, because unless you're there, an off-camera noise, it could be added in. We don't know. So that's why it's not brilliant evidence. And this is why equipment is good. Because it backs up what you're saying in the moment. So if you're saying, oh, I'm feeling really cold, and you're there with a temperature thing, I can't remember the name of the device, but it detects temperature, and then that's saying, oh, yes, it's really cold. You could say, oh, they've made the device cold somehow, they're faking it. But judging the device as a device that's working and things, you can look at it and be like, okay, like if they had a thermometer type thing, and then you could look at that and be like, yeah, it's like heat spots and stuff. If someone is like, oh, you know what, it feels really warm around this area, then you could be like, okay, let's get the thermal imaging out and then show that it's really warm in that area using the technology. And that's good. That's very good when teams do that, but Most Haunted doesn't like doing that, or at least it hasn't for the last 6 videos I've watched of them. They might do it in others, I don't know, but the last 6 videos they've not done that. But Greg, brilliant, works with what he's got, absolutely fantastic filming techniques and things. And yeah, it was really, really good. Even though there's a point where he heard what he describes as a scuff, and he was like, oh, if that was you making it again, no, okay, I'm leaving this area. that's fine. That's brilliant, because he could probably just say, right, it might be me. It's like a door slams behind him. He turns the camera quickly, looks at it. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't say, oh, that door just slammed behind me. He doesn't do anything like that. He probably just mentally thinks, I've just walked through that door. It might be on a slow close. It probably just closed behind me. I won't waste time discussing that when I'm pretty certain it was just that. And then he gets back to the investigation. And then it does slam again. And then he recreates it. And he's like, that was the sound I heard, but it is on a slow close. He doesn't say there might be someone else here who's done it, but he said it's on a slow close, which means that it will have opened a little bit beforehand, which gives people time to run away. So he doesn't say it, but I think it's kind of implied. It's like when he's saying about hearing at either end. I think it's implied he's thinking, right, someone's at that end, someone's at that end, they're hiding from me by the time I get there. But yeah, so his section, brilliant. Nothing really significant happens in it either, in terms of activity. Then you've got, I discussed the door slam. One possibility as well for the door slam, if he's faking things, the door's behind him, he goes into a room on the left, he then leaves the room back into the corridor. You briefly see what looks like his hand or his fingers in shot in the top left corner of the screen. That might be to stop that door slamming. Either way, I suspect he may have just covered the camera, I don't know, but it may very well be the case that he's touched that door. One possibility is he's held the door open for a few moments, so that was the viewer kind of forget that he's just walked through a door, and then let's go, and then slam, and then, oh, it's the one behind me. That's a possibility. I don't think it is, though, because I don't think he fakes things. That would be classed as faking, for him to then be like, oh my god, that door behind me just slammed, when he knows he's just closed the door next to him. And then finally, Carl and Stuart in the upper living quarters. The world's most haunted toilet. Basically, that's all the activity they get revolves around the staircase and the toilet. Yeah, that is what it is. I was just going to check that I've done that. Yeah, done that. Yeah, so their investigation was significantly toned down. Carl and Stuart's was significantly toned down from what I expected. I'll give them that. And they did have some good discussion regarding feeling drained because of the building. And Carl doesn't even say it's paranormal as to why they're drained. He says he doesn't know if it's like the quantity of locations they're doing, the size of the locations. He said it's kind of corridor after corridor after corridor, and he feels like you're being watched and he can't relax and things. Which I understand. That's absolutely fine and reasonable. They're all very, very good discussion points from him. So that was great. But yeah, you've got this haunted toilet, which is funny, really. And I'm just going to quickly, because I've discussed a lot of this, I'm going to separate their notes from my written notes at the moment, just so that then I know exactly what it is that I'm saying. So they're in the upper living quarters with the world's most haunted toilet. There we go. I mean, straight away, Stuart, my feet are just tingling looking at that drop. It was a bizarre and funny comment for him to open on, and I said last time he's the Carl Pilkington of paranormal investigators, and it's that kind of comment which just makes me think that he just comes out with certain one-liners and whatnot. I'm just like, you're basically just Carl Pilkington with how you're reacting. So it's very funny, but that's not a criticism or anything, it's just how it is. Carl mentions Amityville, which again, more of that narrative. Stuart mentions flies, more of the narrative of, oh, this isn't a very nice location, building up, which they don't actually do much of in this investigation. Previous parts, they've done it a lot, but here they don't do it that much, which is absolutely brilliant. It all starts when Stuart sees a shadow. So he sees a dark shadow walk across. So where the toilet is, you'd go out a little bit from the toilet room, and then you'd turn right but from the way you're looking at it, if you're looking at the toilet, you'd go left. So this Stuart says he's seen a shadow go from in front of that toilet out to that side room and just walk across. And he said he didn't see the legs moving, but he saw it go across. And he doesn't know what it was, but that's just what he saw. And Carl's like, okay. And yeah, obviously you've got no evidence for the shadow, which is a shame. So you're just taking Stuart's word for it, which is not brilliant. But it does lead to a bit of good conversation. I will give it that. And yeah. So when they're both there, because I think they're both just kind of standing there in front of the toilet, I'm trying to like find the exact step-by-step for how it all unfolds. So that's all stuff, water tank stuff. Yeah, so Carl hears a door slam behind him in the direction of the toilet. I think that's the next thing that happens. So you've got this door frame. So you've got the toilet, you've got the bit where it would have gone off to the side, and you've got this door frame around it. And Carl's kind of standing in that door frame. There's no door on the door frame, but you hear a door slam. Or at least Carl hears a door slam. I can't remember whether or not you can hear it on the footage, but he hears a door slam, he turns around in the direction of the toilet, and he was expecting the toilet door to have slammed, or one of the doors to have slammed, and no doors have slammed. Stuart's looking around saying, oh no, that door's open, that door's open, that door's open, that's wedged open. And Carl's like, oh, I thought it was from this door frame. Oh wait, there's no door on this door frame. And that leads to a good discussion point of it could be a residual haunting. I personally do not believe residual hauntings to be a thing. At least I don't think I do. I've not put a great deal of thought into it. So residual haunting, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically stone tape theory, where it's not an intelligent haunting. It's not someone standing there observing you, saying hello, trying to communicate. It is history repeating itself. I'm just going to have a bit of a drink because my throat's drying out. But yeah, it's history repeating itself. So the thought behind stone tape theory is something will happen within a room. Maybe a glass will break, someone will shout, I don't know. Someone might laugh, someone might cry. But that energy is exerted and it's soaked up by the walls, and then every now and then some sort of trigger occurs that causes the energy to be kind of spat back out and to replay. So anyone who is in that room at the time will hear this disembodied laughter, but it is just they've done something, or something has happened in the environment to cause the energy to be shoved back out and that to happen, which is a residual haunting. It is not intelligent. I don't like that theory because of the big question of, well, what would cause the replay? And no one ever seems to look into what causes the replay. Granted, the Singapore theory, which indicates if you dress in that time period, like that outfit, if you decorate the location to be exactly as it was back then, at the time of the haunting, that will trigger it and the activity will spike. But it's other moments where you've just got random investigators going into this abandoned place, which looks nothing like it used to, suddenly hearing laughter and whatnot. I'm just like, that's a bit weird. And I can't think of any explanation for it, and there will be an explanation. So yeah, that's why I'm not a fan of stone tape theory. But Carl and Stuart saying that it's residual haunting, it's really good that they do that. I like that very much so. Because it explains how they've heard a door slam and none of the doors are actually closed. Now, skeptically, you could argue off camera a door has closed, they've not shown it, because Carl does not do anything to go, here's this door, here's this door, here's this door. He doesn't really do that. You just see Stuart kind of darting about. So it could have been from behind them, for all we know. Another argument is that it could be an overlaid sound. Which is very true. It could very well be an overlaid sound. I am not so great with listening to audio that I can listen to something and go, that's overlaid for sure. I can't do that. Other people I'm sure can, but I cannot. So it's just speculation for me to be like, that might be overlaid, but I don't know. I know that a lot of these sounds that they hear do not occur over anyone talking. You'd never hear someone talk at the same time knocking is happening. It's always before and after. Well, I don't know about always, but it seems to be that way. But yeah, so they hear the slam, and yes, the Stuart says about the door still being open. Again, this is why I like the written stuff, because otherwise I'm just reading through it, because my memory is awful. There's a point where they hear a door handle jiggle. It's basically what I'm trying to find now. So they have the discussion about residual hauntings. They talk about how drained they are as well throughout it. So Carl hears footsteps, and I put sounds like a door handle jiggling. So I'm assuming that's a case of I've listened to that audio and I've thought, that's not footsteps, that's a door handle. But he's heard it as footsteps. I think that is an overlaid sound, 100%, 1000%, because it sounds the same as when you hear the door handle going a little bit. So he hears that. He then goes, he stands in front of the toilet. Not immediately in front, he describes it 2 steps away from the door. And then Stuart is hanging back a lot. There's a good distance between the two. I'm assuming Stuart's doing it so he gets a full body shot of Carl. You don't need that much space around Carl from the picture for the full body shot to be effective. Maybe it's to capture all the doors, so you know Carl isn't pulling on a string or anything like that, but you see Carl, so you know he's probably not doing that. So there isn't a reason for that gap. Stuart starts slowly walking up to Carl, and there's a point where Stuart passes a door on his right, and as he does that, the exact moment he does that, where that door would have been to his right, like the door handle in particular would have been right there, Carl hears a noise and jumps and backs away from the toilet door and says that he just heard the door. And it sounds like the door handle kind of being shaken. And I think I don't think that's overlaid. I think that happens in the moment. I think Stuart, as he's walking past, either nudges it with his elbow or wiggles it with his hand as he's walking past. I think that's what happens. And then they take that sound, they isolate that sound, and they overlay it previously when Carl says he hears footsteps. But I think that's the source of the sound. Because that's how they create so it sounds like it's part of the footage, because it technically is. It's just from a later point. I think that's how they've done it. And even Stuart's insistence of, oh, wasn't that you? I thought that was you. Kinda, to me, implies it was Stuart. Does Carl know that it's Stuart, if it is Stuart? I reckon he'll know eventually. I think that he'll have a chat with Stuart about it, and Stuart will have afterwards and be like, oh yeah, that was me, you know. Does he know in the moment? I don't know. But when you're in a room and everything's dark and you hear a noise, especially a brief noise, you're not going to be able to pinpoint where it's from. So I think that is what happens in that moment. And then I'm pretty sure it happens again as well. Like, Stuart goes up to Carl, and then they turn away because they hear a bang but down the corridor, a door slamming in the distance, which again I think is an overlaid noise. Unless there is someone else on the team who fakes things, or there's someone we don't know about. But that's reaching a little bit. I want to judge it as it's just those 5. So if it is just those 5, as they say it is, who else could potentially be present and faking? I would say Yvette, but I don't know. I'm on the fence with that. I'll discuss it again more in my overall thoughts, but yeah, hear door slam in distance, which I think is overlaid. They turn the camera away from the door, they then hear the door handle, and then Stuart straight away, right, I've got my camera on the handle now. Obviously, when it's on the handle, no noise happens. He's like, and obviously by the time he starts speaking, no noise is happening. So he's got the camera on the door handle and saying, right, I've got it on the handle, ready for if it happens again, because it's happened a couple of times now. And then Carl straight away, oh, what's that green light over there? And then Stuart, oh, camera off of the thing. and says, "Oh no, it's just a fire alarm. It's on a sensor. That's what it is." And that's it for the door handle noises. I think that it is a mixture of overlaid and that one time where Stuart goes past and probably just fills it himself. Especially because it sounds like it's right next to the camera. I don't think it sounds particularly in the distance. But yeah, so I think that's how that is. And then later on, Carl's talking about how drained he is and things, and then Stuart hears noise to his right, and you can hear this noise on the camera. When I first heard it, I thought it sounded like Velcro. When watching it with my mum, she said it sounds like a crisp packet crinkling. And I've listened to it back, and I was like, yeah, if Velcro's too harsh a noise, it's not like someone's just torn Velcro. It's like someone's gently done that, or kind of fiddled with it a little bit. Or like with a crisp packet, or paper, or something like that, like a receipt, where someone's just gently crinkled it. And Stuart says he hears a movement to his side, which I interpret as like a shuffle. Carl says he hears a scrape, which those two noises to me are very different. A scrape is somewhat similar to the receipt type thing, but it's still different. It's not quite the same. Granted, they're in the dark, they'll misinterpret noises. But I think that again is Stuart. Or an overlay, because Carl doesn't really react to it at first, and they don't quite get the noise right. So I think it's either an overlay, or Stuart's just fiddled with his pocket a little bit to create a noise. And then that causes them to go out, and then they're at the top of the spiral staircase again. And they hear footsteps from downstairs. So they hear these footsteps on the stairs. And I've listened to it a number of times. It doesn't sound like they're coming up the stairs. It sounds like they're just walking around a bit aimlessly. It doesn't sound like anyone's going up. It sounds steady like it could be, but it doesn't increase in volume quite the right way, I don't think. I could be very wrong with that, of course, because there's a number of things that this could be. It could be overlaid noise. It could be a case of, well, it's not really a number of things, there's two things. Well, three things. Overlaid, actually paranormal, or there's someone down there. I think it's either overlaid, because it does not occur while anyone is talking. Granted, you can overlay sound when people are talking, but it's kind of like a scripted thing in a way where it's cues of you're going to do 2 steps, I'm going to start talking. You're going to do 3 steps, I'm going to start talking again. That's what it feels like. So I don't know if it's overlaid. Again, I don't know from listening to stuff. I can't tell if something is overlaid. But when listening to it, it just seems off, especially with the angle, and you can't see the lower floors. And Carl says it seems like it's just gone up to the first floor, and that's all the stairs that are kind of a bit out of shot. Yet they're like, "Oh, we followed it with our eyes." I was like, "All right, I don't know what else you're gonna follow it with." But yeah, so they say that, and I'm just like, it's a bit iffy, really. And then there's a lot of discussion from Carl and Stuart of we're not going to see anything. And I really disagree with that. I think that there are teams who have caught things on camera legitimately, both photographs and video. I think teams have legitimately caught sounds and things. I think sounds are probably the most common type of phenomena, but I think you probably can capture things moving and things on camera and it be legitimate. And they themselves have claimed this type of thing. When only a couple of episodes ago, like in one of these parts, they talked about capturing loads of doors slammed on camera. Granted, it was locked off camera, but they said they still caught it. But they're saying, oh, it's not going to happen on camera, it's always in the distance. They just had a door handle jiggle right next to them. So I'm like, it's not always in the distance. You just need to have better filming. So really, they all need to have a GoPro type thing on their heads, body cam, something like that. They hold a camera each at the very minimum. Each one needs to be holding a camera. Because it seems like the team only owns 2 cameras. Actually 3 cameras. Because they've split off into 3 teams. Maybe 4. But either way, if you have 4 cameras, why do you not use all the cameras? I know that the light they've said in the past the light from each camera, if you look at each other, affects the visuals, but just don't look directly at one another if that's the issue, or get cameras where you can look at one another. That's the kind of thing where I'm like, it's a bit iffy. Because other people do it. I've seen other investigators with multiple cameras, and they've all done it. So it is a possibility. Yeah, so you've got the stairs, and they don't want to go down. They're very reluctant to actually go down, and I'm pretty sure Stuart who's saying, oh, the way it goes, we'll go down there, but then we'll hear something up here, and that's the way it goes. It's always in the distance, and that Carl's saying we'll never capture anything on camera. It's like, well, why are you filming then? Why are you filming visuals if you're never going to capture any visuals on camera? Why are you not just recording audio? Why are you not taking out audio files? I mean, I know it isn't as convincing or entertaining, but, you've got those kinds of things. So why are you not focusing just on EVPs? Because you could do. And that's another point which I haven't mentioned. Glenn earlier on said he's got a laptop set up recording EVPs. They've completely forgotten about that. Either that or they caught nothing at all, which I think is probably the case. Because they never mentioned his laptop ever again. Only Glenn mentions his laptop. So that seems like it just didn't come to anything. But again, narration from Yvette in this episode said, Glenn had his laptop set up. We didn't capture anything on it. At the very least, you should do that. Otherwise, it leaves questions, and these are questions we shouldn't have. But yeah, so they don't want to go downstairs. When they do finally go downstairs, you've got this weird thing where they go down a couple of stairs. Carl then stops at the top and says about having no energy and stuff. And then Stuart, camera up towards Carl. I think I've included a picture of that in my post. But it seems very much so like they don't want to go downstairs and they don't want to film downstairs. That to me implies those footsteps came from someone who was actually there downstairs and they don't want to capture them accidentally on camera. Again, it's weird filming techniques where it raises these questions of why are you not just going downstairs? Why are you having a dramatic pause after going down like 2 steps? And they discuss as well, like Stuart discusses about the door handle again and says, oh, I know it wasn't you, Carl, because I saw you moving towards the door then. And so you have that kind of thing happen, and Carl just kind of stands there, he pauses, and they replay the footage as well, which is absolutely brilliant that they do that, but it reminds me a lot of the 30 East Drive incident, where they were called out for faking things with the rope pull, and where they had to properly talk about it. And that feels like that in that moment where Carl's paused and he's showing the footage again, being like, look, it wasn't me who did that. It seems like it's good that he's acknowledging that there are questions about him, that people have been like, I think Carl's faking things. But the way they film things, it doesn't help him out at all. And that moment in particular, stopping there after 2 steps, being like, oh, I'm out of breath, and he doesn't say that, but he says the place strains you, and with Stuart pointing the camera up at him after they've just heard footsteps downstairs, which they are not going to investigate, he raises questions, and talking about the questions doesn't help answer them. So it's very strange. And they do eventually go downstairs, and that is it for the review. For the episodes, and also for the review, because I think I've discussed everything. Gone through all my notes and things. Thank you very much for the like. I can't see who just liked. I'm suspecting Nicolette, as your picture just appeared. But thank you for liking, if that was you or whoever it was. But yeah, so that is that episode. I really did enjoy it for the most part. There are obviously the little things with Carl and Stuart where I'm like, and I've got suspicions, but I'll discuss all of that in more detail in my overall thoughts and overall review, which will be not next week, but the week after. I don't know when the video is going to be out, because usually I do the live video like this on a Friday, or at least I try and do it on a Friday. I know I've not been brilliant at that. The post should definitely be published on Friday, the written post. As for the video, it might be the Wednesday, it might be Saturday, probably Saturday. It depends on how everything goes with posts and things and how I'm feeling and whatnot, because I've got an important family thing on, I think it's the 9th, when this is scheduled to be out. So yeah, that is everything. Thank you very much for everyone who has watched this video, and for everyone who will watch this video. I'll upload it to YouTube as well, and I'll share it from YouTube to everywhere. So thank you to anyone who's watched it on YouTube as well. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on the Most Haunted team and on what I have discussed. Do you agree? Do you not agree? It's absolutely fine if you don't agree. But, you know, just be justified with it. Just say, if you don't agree, why don't you agree? And we can have a bit of a discussion about it. Do you think Yvette's faking it? Because I don't. Or at least I don't know. I'm still on the fence. I'll discuss it more in my overall thoughts. But I think Glenn and Greg definitely aren't. Carl and Stuart definitely are. Yvette's in the middle. So let me know what you think. And thank you very much for watching. And I just need to lift that up a little bit to actually say goodbye. And goodbye.